again for being here with us. We have JoAnn Crone. She's author, parent educator, a teacher, and the founder of No Guilt Mom. She's going to be talking to us about you're probably doing too much. And as mothers, all of us can relate to that. JoAnn, thank you so much for being here with me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to get into this because even as a mom and no guilt mom, I still think I'm doing too much. So
do you feel like that kids can handle a lot more responsibility than a lot of parents think?
They can handle so much responsibility. But the thing that goes wrong is that as soon as we see them fail, we tend to want to save them. We can't save them with a reminder. We can't save them with appeasing them, saying if they don't want to sit at the table and do their homework alone, we can't say something like, okay, well, we'll sit here today, but tomorrow it's on your own. We have to just take ourselves out of that. And we can see once they have experienced, a little bit of failure, once they've experienced the natural consequences for not doing something, my daughter is in charge of feeding the dog and it's a new job for her. And she has been forgetting to feed the dog. And so her natural consequence is she knows the dog's gone hungry all day and her heart hurts for that. And she's like, I'm so sorry. So that's the natural consequence. Pretty soon the dog's going to be going in her room and I'll be like, she ate something in there. I
don't know. Oh, I love it. That's so awesome.
They can take on a lot.
And at what point, if at all, do you intervene as a parent? Because I know, like you said, hey, you kind of have to be consistent or it's not going to work. Is there a time where you do need to intervene and step in?
If they're in physical danger, intervene and step in. But I mean, most stuff that we encounter every day, we don't need to step in. If they're fighting with their sibling, it's probably better we don't step in. If they're missing an assignment or if they don't do their homework right away, it's probably better we don't step in. We can lead them and we can have discussions with them, not in the moment. I always recommend, if you see a problem happening that you want to say something about right then, just kind of check it off in your memory and wait until after it's kind of happened and resolved, and then talk about it with them. Most of the time, you probably won't need to talk about it with them because they've solved it without us getting into it.
Right. So never do it in the heat of the moment. Do you set expectations for your kids and communicate those and then kind of let things lie as they do? Or do you just kind of even let them set their own expectations? How does that work?
So we have as a family our expectations, and our kids know this, is, I was a teacher and I'm a writer and my husband's an engineer. School is important to us. It's very important. And it's important they try their best and they try things and they fail. Failure is a huge discussion for us. We're always asking them, what was really hard for you today? What didn't you do so well at? Because we want them to push their boundaries and make sure that they know that, it's better to try and fail than, never to try at all. So They know that academics and education is really important to us. They know about respect and to treat each other with respect. And we model that by treating them with respect. They know about kindness to others, those general expectations where it's really big character traits that we value and we teach as a family. And then all the problems that arise usually have to do with something, that's in violation of one of those traits. Right. So where there's no explicit, it's kindness, it's respect, it's education, those discussions happen all the time.
Right. They just happen organically. I love that. I think that's awesome. What advice do you have for parents if their kids are refusing to cooperate or do homework, or if they've just completely lost interest? What advice do you have for those parents?
So usually when kids refuse to do homework or lose interest, there's something else going on. It's not just about the homework. There's some other issue. It could be an issue where they don't feel like they're very in control of the scenario. And they need some time to decompress. They they don't want to, they're so used to fighting about it and fighting parents about it that they're not used to having the problem as their own. So as soon as parents like step back from it and be like, okay, this is your issue. I'm going to stand back. And when parents stand back and they watch, they're really watching for what else may be tripping up the kid. Is if it's in homework, I mean, how is reading going? Are they having any difficulties reading? Are they struggling with homework assignments because there's a reading issue? Or if it's math, are they struggling that there's like some kind of math issue? And we're just watching. If they're struggling too, I would also have a discussion with the teacher and see if the teacher has seen any underlying like educational issues. So if all those pass, then just stepping back and really watching their kids and trying not to kind of intervene, but see what your kids do on their own. And then you can have conversations and look for progress and not perfection in doing homework. So I guess like just to summarize, just step back, because when you step back, you see what the problem is.
Right. Instead of trying to intervene too quickly when you may not be sure if that's the right thing to do. I think that's great advice, really good advice. So I want to know, even with the balls.
Balls.
I'm sorry. Balls. I'm sorry. I can't help it.
I do it too. I think that's what makes it fun.
So going back to that, and even it can tie into what you were saying about kids and their homework when you kind of step back a little bit. What have you seen when you have seen a mom implement these things that maybe had so much mom guilt and all this, and then they implement your little program? What impact has that had on their life?
It's completely changed their family dynamic. I mean, we have so many stories of parents who are just fighting with their kids over homework. And I mean, this goes from like kindergartners all the way up to middle schoolers, which is what our two programs really cover. And I mean, there was this kindergarten family where the daughter would come home from school and she'd have to go to a sitter first for 2 hours. And then her mom was always home at night, but her dad was always home in the morning. And so they would fight about how this little kindergartner should do her homework. Like, should she do it at the kitchen table? What time should she do it at? Like, should she stay focused the whole time? Should she have breaks? And it was just driving them all mad. And so then they gave control over to this 5-year-old. Like the 5-year-old, like watched the videos and she learned kind of how to structure her routine with her mom because she's 5.
Yeah.
But then she turned to them and she told them what she wanted. She's like, I'm going to do it here. I'm going to do it right now. And they gave it to her and she totally took over. So that fight that they were having, it just disappeared. It completely changed their family dynamic. Mom didn't have to nag anymore. Mom and dad didn't have to fight about homework anymore. It's an amazing transformation when we give them more responsibility to our kids.
That's so cool. So what would be the number one takeaway that you want moms to remember from all of this?
So the number one thing is, I think there's so much beauty in mistakes and failure. Like there's so much wonderfulness that comes out of it. And we try to sometimes prevent that because first, we want things to run really efficiently. And usually we're trying to get to things on time, less so during this pandemic. But we want things to run orderly. Also, sometimes we prevent mistakes because we don't want things to be so hard on our kids. Like we don't like to see them experience like the tears and the frustration. But once you step back and you let them make mistakes, you then, instead of being like that person who's nagging and reminding, you're that person who's like, I'm so sorry. Like that's happened to me. I know how that feels. And so it develops an even closer relationship with your kid when you can take that role versus the nagging and the reminding. And your kid learns more from making the mistake than they do from you telling them what might happen if they do such and such. So there's so much beauty in mistakes and failure.
And you become more of the safe place for your kid instead of the place they don't want to be because you're constantly nagging.
Yeah. Like I mean, we were in car drop-off line once and all of a sudden my son's like, oh my gosh, I forgot my library book. I have to return my library book. And like we live like less than a mile from the school. It would have been pretty easy for me to get on a car line, drive home, and then drive back, but it would also have been like a lot more stress.
Right.
And so I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry, bud. And he looks at me, he's like, can you go home and get it? And I said, no, we can't go home and get it right now. That would be really stressful. But like, I totally know how it feels. And I know how it feels like to feel like you're going to get in trouble with your teacher and everything. And then I was able to talk with him just about the feelings instead of like either saving him or being like, you really need to remember this. Like, this is such an imposition for me.
Good for him. That's awesome. Yeah. I love that. So my last question for you is, because since the theme of our conference is Confessions of an Imperfect Mother, I want to know if you have any examples of a time you made, it doesn't have to be a huge mistake, but a mistake in your parenting journey, but then everything turned out okay.
Yeah. I mean, I do this weekly. I mean, it was like probably 3 weeks ago. We're trying to get my son to do his own laundry, and he already like puts his laundry in the washing machine and dryer and takes it out. But really we need to go one step further in folding. So his laundry came out and I'm like, hey bud, when are you going to fold? And he's like, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. Like when you're working. Tomorrow comes. I ask him that night. I'm like, so like, when are you going to fold? He's like, oh, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to fold my laundry. And I'm like, but you promised me you'd fold your laundry. I didn't use the word promise. But you need to fold your laundry. To which he said, you can't make me fold my laundry.
Oh my gosh.
It was just thing after thing after thing that I knew. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to like blow up. And I like walked downstairs. I took myself out of the situation and I was just like so mad. He came up to me and he's like, Mom, are you okay? I'm sorry. I'm like, can you just try to fold your laundry? He's like, no, I'm not going to fold my laundry. So my 7-year-old had better boundaries than I did at that point. And I kept pushing it until I went to my husband and I'm like, am I making a big deal out of this laundry thing? Like, why am I getting so upset about this? And he's like, yeah, you're making a big deal out of it because it doesn't affect us at all. It only affects him.
Right.
So I made up with him and I'm like, okay, well, I respect that you don't want to fold your laundry and you're just going to have that basket of clean clothes in your bedroom and just pull out of the clean clothes. But we fold laundry so we can find stuff easier. So if you like can't find something in the morning, I can't come in and help you. And he's like, yeah, I know. I'm like, okay. So then a week goes by and he's like looking for socks in the morning and he's like, Mom, can you help me find socks? And I look at him and I'm like, he's like, oh, right. And he goes in. 2 or 3 weeks later, after this whole laundry fiasco, we finally found the way it affected us because he was taking all the laundry baskets in the house and like he had so many laundry baskets in his room. And finally we're like, it's time to fold the laundry. And at that point he had experienced enough of like finding stuff that he's like, okay. But I was willing to like be right there and battle him for the laundry. And I did for a bit, but it turned out okay. And now he pulls his laundry.
Hey, I love that he stood his ground too. He was not budging.
Oh my gosh. I'm like, I need to learn something about boundaries from you, kid. Like,
no kidding. Oh, I love that so much. I can't wait till my kids are that age. Lots more adventures. That's awesome. All right. JoAnn Crone, she's an author, parent educator, teacher, and the founder of No Guilt Mom. Thank you so much for taking the time and being here with me today.
Thank you for having me. This has been fun.
Yes. We'll talk to you soon.